Welcome to Endo Battery Fast Charged, a series dedicated to keeping you informed and empowered in the realm of endometriosis. Teaming up with board-certified patient advocates, we bring you the latest articles, research, and insights to equip you with accurate information and a deeper understanding. Whether you're expanding your knowledge, staying updated, or seeking clarity, you're in the right place. I'm your host, Alana, and this is Endo Battery Fast Charged, charging and empowering your life with knowledge. Welcome back to Endo Battery Fast Charged. Let's be honest, reading research papers when you're already exhausted, in pain, and trying to function like a semi-normal human feels like being handed a textbook when you asked for a lifeline. Like, oh, perfect, exactly what I needed today. 17 pages of words I can't pronounce and a conclusion that says more research is needed. Revolutionary. So this is your Endo Battery Fast Charged, your quick shot of espresso. But instead of caffeine, it's clarity and significantly fewer graphs. I take research, older, newer, and sometimes sent by you, and break it down into something that actually makes sense without stripping away nuance or pretending we've magically solved endometriosis overnight. Because, quick reminder, research is helpful, but it's also messy. It gives us clues, not conclusions. Breadcrumbs, not a full GPS. So that being said, just remember, correlation does not equal causation. So if something sounds exciting, we appreciate it responsibly. No spiraling, no this is the cure, no panic ordering supplements at 2 a.m. All right, with that being said, espresso kicked in, let's get into it. Okay. Imagine this. Scientists basically said, what if we could grow tiny versions of endometriosis in a lab and just watch it? And somehow, instead of that being a sci-fi thriller, it became an actual research. In the study that's titled Patient-Derived Epithelial Cell Organoids Mimic the Phenotypic Complexity of Endometriosis Subtypes, this study looked at what's called organoids, tiny 3D mini tissues grown from real endometriosis cells taken during surgery, and the wild part, they behave a lot like the original tissue. So instead of guessing what endometriosis is doing, researchers can now observe it in something that actually resembles real life, which is a major upgrade from previous models that were, let's be honest, giving close enough energy. This study looked at whether different types of endometriosis can affect how these organoids grow. And shocker, they do. Not all samples behave the same, which reinforces what patients have been saying forever. This is not a one-size-fits-all disease. They also found that tissue from patients on hormonal treatments didn't grow as well into organoids. Now, before we all collectively spiral, this doesn't mean hormones are bad and that anything is being ruined. It just means they may influence how tissues behave in a lab, which is very controlled and very unnatural environment compared to our bodies. So what's the good part about this? We're getting closer to testing treatments on actual patient-derived tissue. That's a big step towards personalized medicine. The not so good part of this study, organoids don't include your full immune system, nervous system, or the chaos of real life biology. So it's still an incomplete model. And what's the so-so part about this study? It's exciting, but it's early. Think future potential, not next doctor's visit potential. Science is finally starting to reflect the real complexity of endometriosis, and that is way overdue. However, if your gut has ever felt like it's actively working against you, welcome. You are in good company today. This study titled High Prevalence of Small Intestinal Bacterial Overgrowth and Intestinal Methanogen Overgrowth in Endometriosis Patients, a case control study, looked at over 1,000 women to see if microbial overgrowth in the gut, things like SIBO and IMO, were more common in people with endometriosis. And yes, they were. About 92% of those with endometriosis tested positive. But And this is important, 83% of people without endometriosis also tested positive. So this is not a clean aha moment. This is more like, okay, something's going on here, but let's not flip the table just yet. Where it gets interesting is the type of overgrowth. Methane-dominant overgrowth linked to constipation and slower digestion was more common in endometriosis patients. Hydrogen-dominant overgrowth leaned more towards diarrhea. So if your digestive system feels like it's switching personalities without warning, there may actually be a biological explanation. So what's the good part of this study? This validates that gut symptoms are common and worth paying attention to. The not so great part of this study, breath testing isn't perfect, and testing SIBO does not equal treating endometriosis. Let me say that again. Treating SIBO does not equal treating endometriosis. Just for everyone in the back to hear. And here's that part of it. There's overlap, but we don't fully understand the relationship yet. Your gut is involved, but it's one piece of a much bigger, very complicated puzzle. And let's talk about puzzles for a second, because in this next study titled Endometriosis and Autoimmunity, dives into the immune system, which in endometriosis seems to be doing a little bit of everything and not at all helpful. For a long time, endometriosis was thought of as primarily hormonal or reproductive, but research like this is showing the immune system may just be as central to the story, and not in a subtle way. People with endometriosis are more likely to also have autoimmune conditions, things like thyroid disorders, lupus, or rheumatoid arthritis, which raises the question, is the immune system underreacting where it should be clearing abnormal tissue and overreacting where it shouldn't? Because honestly, it's giving mixed signals. One of the biggest themes here is chronic inflammation. Endometriosis lesions release inflammatory signals called cytokines that keep telling the immune system something's wrong on repeat. And when that signal never turns off, the body stays in a consistent low-grade inflammatory state, which can show up as pain, fatigue, and that general feeling of your body being not regulated. Now, here's where it gets more specific. In a typical immune response, your body should recognize and clear misplaced cells. But in endometriosis, there may be impaired immune surveillance, meaning those cells aren't being cleared effectively. So instead of being removed, they're allowed to stick around and may even be supported by the inflammatory environment. There's also evidence of altered immune cell function. Natural killer cells, or NK cells, which are supposed to destroy abnormal cells, may be less effective. Macrophages, which helps clean up inflammation, may actually promote it instead. So again, confusing, contradictory, and not exactly efficient. There are also overlaps in autoimmune-like patterns, like chronic inflammation and immune dysregulation. But endometriosis is not officially classified as an autoimmune disease, so we're a bit in that gray area. So what's the good part of this? It's that this expands our understanding of endometriosis as a systemic condition and opens the door for immune-targeted therapies. But the not so great part about this study, we don't yet have clear, standardized immune-based treatments. And let's be honest, the connection is strong, but we're still trying to figure it out. Endometriosis may involve an immune system that's both underperforming and overreacting. So if your symptoms feel systemic, it's not just in your head. There may be a real immune component behind this experience. But this is where research gets almost uncomfortably specific in the best way. In the study titled Endometriosis and Adenomyosis Unveiled Through Single-Cell Glasses, scientists are now analyzing endometriosis at the level of an individual cell, which is both incredible and slightly invasive. Like, nothing is private anymore, not even your cells. What they're finding is that lesions are made up of multiple cell types: epithelial, stromal, immune, vascular, all interacting and contributing to inflammation, growth, and survival. So instead of one issue, it's more like a group project where no one is communicating and somehow everything is due tomorrow. One major finding is abnormal gene expression. Genes being turned on or off in ways they shouldn't be. This affects hormone response, immune signaling, and how cells survive, which leads to something many people experience: progesterone resistance. Some tissues just don't respond to hormones the way we expect, which helps explain why treatments don't work for everyone. They've also found that even the uterine lining can show abnormal immune activity and gene expression, which may impact fertility. And importantly, different lesion types have completely different molecular profiles. Now, what's the good part of this study? This opens the door for personalized targeted treatments. The not so great part of this study is this level of testing isn't widely available yet. I mean, we understand more, but applying it clinically will take time. If treatments haven't worked the way you were told they would, it may not be you. It may be biology. We're still learning to understand all of this. The last article we're going to look at feels a little personal. The study titled Assessing Risk of Gynecologic and Obstetric Diagnosis in Patients with Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome. This study looked at over 100 million patients and found that people with Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome, EDS for short, have significantly higher rates of endometriosis and reproductive health issues. We're talking 6.3% versus 1%. That's not subtle. That's science politely raising an eyebrow. EDS affects collagen, the structural support system of the body, and when the system is a little, let's say, less structurally committed, it can impact everything from joints to pelvic support that can show up in pelvic pain, prolapse, incontinence, painful intercourse, and symptoms don't always fit neatly into one diagnosis. The study also found higher rates of heavy bleeding, anemia, fertility challenges, and pregnancy complications like preeclampsia and postpartum hemorrhage. The good part of this study is that this validates that some patients may have overlapping conditions. The not so great part about this study is that EDS is often underdiagnosed and overlooked, much like endometriosis. This is an association, but it isn't a guarantee. For some, endometriosis may be one piece of a bigger picture, and recognizing that could change care. Okay, if your brain feels fuller, slightly caffeinated, and maybe just a tiny bit overwhelmed, perfect. That's the sweet spot, because this is what real research looks like. It's messy, evolving, and rarely gives us neat, satisfying answers. But it does move us forward. You are not too complicated. Your body is not random. And the gaps in understanding, that's not your problem. So take what resonates. Leave what doesn't. Stay curious, but maybe don't diagnose yourself with 5 new conditions before dinner. And if something clicked today, use it as a conversation starter with a provider who actually listens. Because you deserve care that evolves with the research, not one that ignores it. And before you go, if you come across research or articles that you want help making sense of, send them my way. Seriously, I love this stuff. So you don't have to read it alone. Make sure you're following along on Instagram and YouTube and subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss future episodes and conversations. Everything here is rooted in supporting those impacted by endometriosis and other chronic conditions with compassion, evidence-based information, and a whole lot of validation. So until next time, continue advocating for you and for others.